Jim, thanks so much for taking the time to come meet with us today. Would really love to pass it over to you. Please introduce yourself and tell us about the origin of Synervoz.
Cool. So Jim, CEO of Synervoz. Our origin story goes back to like 2014 when it was an idea. It became full-time in 2016. We went through Techstars. At the time, totally different company. It was B2C focused. We had this idea for a new audio social network. People describe it back to us as like an audio Slack with these sort of drop-in audio channels, voice commands to hop between talking to like any person on your team or a group on your team. Inside of each of those channels, you could listen to music together, synchronize it. When you would talk, the music would duck because we had a voice activity detector. Long story short, that did not go viral enough. And in time, we learned that, these features should be built into something like Slack rather than a standalone application with a Slack integration. That led to our pivot where we built an SDK. Building that app was a pain. And basically, we built the SDK to solve that pain, which is, building products with these complex audio features should not be this difficult. And, we should not have to do it in a completely different language and redo it for iOS and then Android and the web. And it was just a giant pain. So the SDK that we ended up building solves that problem. So somewhere around 2019 was when that pivot happened. And from then till now, we've been sort of a combination of building the SDK and starting to market the SDK, which we only launched fairly recently, and then more or less surviving from revenue by doing custom engineering for the target audience of that SDK, which is anybody developing audio software.
Awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about who is Synervoz for? Who are your primary customers, your target audience, and how does Synervoz address their specific needs?
Yeah, so basically any software developer who is building something audio software related. So you might be a generalist developer, but you're struggling to build audio features into your application, which might be voice communication apps, voice video chat is sort of one segment where people are trying to do, whether it's for team communication or some sort of social app. There's often something beyond just voice and video chat. It might be that, they want it to be hands-free and that requires the audio features to do the voice recognition or to, all of the hands-free controls, or they're struggling with Bluetooth issues, or they need to mix it with music or a watch party or a game where you have multiple audio channels coming together. And then especially, if they're trying to build a product that is cross-platform, just struggling with cross-platform audio issues. So that sort of communications domain is one of them. Music and entertainment is sort of another domain, whether it's for music production or again, some sort of social app where you're listening to music together or learning music together. Basically anything that has audio, anything that touches audio, and especially real-time audio, because that's where, you have these hard real-time constraints that are pretty difficult to program around, and there's just not a lot of people that have that expertise. And so we solve the problems through a combination of our SDK and providing custom engineering services, because we've got a team of experts that focus exclusively on these types of problems for the last many years.
Gotcha. And when beginning startups, there's obviously so many challenges, so many things that you're facing. Can you tell us a little bit about the specific challenge that you came to coLAB with, and what was it that was keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I think like a lot of companies, just not running out of money is the thing that that keeps us up at night. So whether you're, searching for VC money or, trying to drive the top line revenue enough to keep yourself above water, that's what was keeping me up at night. And, we've always been founder-led sales. It's been me doing, a majority of the sales and trying to systematize that. So, we came to coLAB looking for help building out that sales process and experimenting with everything to drive more top of funnel, whether that's inbound marketing or cold outbound sales processes. We had just started using HubSpot, didn't really know our way around that much, and just sort of having a thought partner to, guide us through and make sure we're, implementing things as efficiently as possible, and to know that we're doing it right along the way is kind of how we got involved, and then we just sort of ran different campaigns together over the next year, and kind of saw how just sort of made a more scalable sales process out of that process.
I love that. I want to expand on that really quick too. Can you walk us through some of the ways that coLAB specifically helps you solve these challenges?
Yeah. So I mean, in the first days, we basically kind of step back and look at what had worked so far. Who is our ICP? I think we did some interviews with some of our existing customers and sort of spreadsheeted things out to identify, who are we really going after here? Where do they hang out? Where should we target them? And then, a lot of our exercises moved into HubSpot. So we spent a lot of time either developing spreadsheets or else setting up campaigns inside of HubSpot. So that might have been, cold outbound email sequences where, we have set up lists that are for particular use cases or target groups. And, we had identified those target groups through that earlier exercise of, who has these problems that you guys know how to solve, that your SDK will be a good fit for, that your services will be a good fit for. So we just set up a number of different lists, and of course you have to sort of, we would call it, enrich those lists. So you might identify the companies, then you need to figure out who the right people are at those companies, get some email addresses. And so that's sort of the cold outbound process. We did quite a bit there. We also just did, some experimentation on the inbound side. So whether it was, looking at different AdWords and sort of experimenting with how can we get people to find us, because inbound, when we have had it, tends to convert faster. So we did some experimentation there, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the approach in general was sort of experimentation, and then the tools that we would use tended to be, spreadsheets and HubSpot more than anything else.
Awesome. So it sounds like from the experimentations, there were a bunch of learnings that came out of it. There were a bunch of implementations during our time working together. What's been the impact on your business since we'd worked together?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been a lot more systematized. So, there was not a whole lot of rhyme or reason when it was sort of just me doing it. I'd, get introductions through my network, or I'd be, sending out in-mails or connect requests on LinkedIn. And we still do some of that, but now, A, I'm not the only one able to do it, and B, by having this sort of process that lives in HubSpot, I'm able to share a lot of, my network and conversations, just kind of everything that I do gets into this process, which allows other people to either take over the process or to learn from the process so that it will be able to scale out to other people. It's not all just locked up in my brain. And, so it's definitely, I think we've seen as an impact, our customer base has diversified. We sort of had like a lot of companies that one marquee customer who's responsible for more than half of the revenue, and then, sort of a smattering of additional projects here and there. Now it's more diversified, and at any given time, we've got sort of like 10 projects happening in parallel. So we've grown, it's been linear. We haven't unlocked like the hockey stick growth yet. But that's still to come, and I think it's been a process to build this out, and you can feel that it's becoming more and more. It's more of an automated feel, I guess. We're not quite automated yet. It's still manual effort involved, but it feels more automated than before.
So it sounds like some good processes and procedures are in place that really are helping you now get to that point of getting ready for the hockey stick to come.
For sure. And I think, the most important part of it as a founder is that you don't feel like you're the only one who can do it anymore. Now you've got this sort of system in place where it's you can get a person focused on sales, biz dev to, involved in that process, so they can take some of that work off your plate and start to scale it out.
I love it. Well, I know things are moving so quickly within the startup spaces. I'm curious, what's like the most significant milestone or achievement that you've had over the past year that might have like reshaped or more solidified your vision for the future?
Yeah, I mean, so we actually launched the SDK, and so, at this point we're trying to shift a lot of our sort of income from the services side over to licensing on the SDK side. And that's kind of where the hopefully the hockey stick growth should come from, because just being a more product driven business than service driven. In the past it's been much more, we would rely on the services for that last mile, but the SDK is becoming much more self-sufficient and requires a little bit less hand holding from us. So that's been a big change that's just kind of getting underway recently. And I think we see a lot of promise in it. And I think, the industry at large, there's, an ever growing need for the tools that we provide, especially as, there's a lot of new like AI audio tools coming to market, and these companies are trying to build SDKs around their products, but they're not easy to work with yet. And so we're starting to find that developers are finding their way to us, and, they'll see that we're integrated with some of these other tools and be like, hey, do you guys make it easy to put these other tools together? And yes. So yeah, it all looks pretty promising so far.
I love that. And actually, I want to double click on that. So you being a founder on the forefront of audio technology, you just touched on AI. What kind of emerging trends or technology in the industry are you seeing, and how are you having Synervoz prepare for this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a cop-out to say that, AI is the obvious trend. But in our space, it's audio AI models. They're for different reasons. You've got like stem separation, where you take a piece of music and you can split it into, say, like the drums, the vocals, and the guitar, and then you might apply different effects to those for a karaoke app, or maybe you're just going to remix it into music. There's generative music, so just generating music from scratch using AI models, to timbre transfer, where you can sort of make one thing sound like something else, to AI-based noise suppression, just for voice and video calls, where you're trying to get rid of the noise or echo and that sort of thing. So there are lots of ways that it gets used. It's often just audio in, it gets transformed, audio out in a different format. So we've positioned for it basically primarily through the SDK by integrating with sort of all of the best AI tools that are out there, and making them easier to integrate into end products and to sort of put them together into broader audio pipelines, because you often don't use these things in isolation. You might need, a filter, or you might need two of the models in the same product. And again, many of these things in the current environment are only available to be used if you know how to, you might have to access them through C++, and there aren't a lot of people with that expertise. And so Switchboard just makes that a whole lot easier for them. So we kind of act as like a glue for all of these different audio AI bricks that are out there.
Awesome. Jim, something that we like to do is a looping question. So the founder before you has left a question for you to answer, and then after you respond to that, then we'll ask you to leave a question for the next founder that we interview. The question that was left for you is, what is one action you've taken in the past 2 years that has the greatest impact on your startup?
Probably just starting to use HubSpot, or using a CRM, period, because we didn't before. And that has sort of systematized everything. Before it just, everything has become much more formulaic. It's become more of a team sport, because we all have this one place to sort of consolidate, our ideas around who we should be selling to, all of our calls, all of the information, the deal flow. But then, that moves upstream to like the website, where you're now thinking about the funnel. Well, how do we, who do we want to visit our website, and what page do we want them to land on? And if they fill out a form, does that get into HubSpot? So it's just sort of created a much more structured thinking around everything we do, from what are we building and why to how are we going to get it in front of those people. So I would say, just using a CRM in the first place, and that's something that we've really only started doing in the last couple of years.
That's a great answer. It's a really good one. What question would you like to leave for the next founder that we interview?
How many times have you almost run out of money, and and how did that feel each time? How many more hours did you work each time? Something along those lines. I know I've met plenty of other founders. We've been in that boat ourselves more than once. So yeah, just curious if the next founder will have found themselves in that boat before.
Perfect. We'll ask it and we'll send you the response. Well, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it. Very excited to see the continued growth for Synervoz.
I hope so as well.